Well, certainly they felt as though they have some leverage here, Arda and Bakari. Keep in mind, this meeting was scheduled to talk about Bill 5, the contentious and controversial mining piece of legislation that the Ford government passed 2 weeks ago. So this meeting was organized by some 39 chiefs and the Premier to talk about Bill 5. And then 24 hours ago, the Premier made these comments that many in the First Nations community, including Sol Mamakwa, the deputy leader of the NDP, who's the sole First Nations member here in the Ontario legislature, believed that they were troubling and racist today when the Premier and the leader of this First Nations group as part of the Anishinaabe First Nation emerged from their meeting. The first words of the Premier's mouth was that he sincerely apologized behind closed doors to these chiefs, saying that sometimes he gets very passionate, that his words come out the wrong way, but is sincerely sorry for offending any First Nations leaders in that room and any First Nations communities across the province of Ontario. The First Nations chief, who you'll hear from in a second, said that she felt as though the apology was sincere, and the other chiefs in the room also felt it was sincere. And now they'll bring it back to some of the other First Nations leaders who were not in the room today. As it comes for Bill 5, the Premier saying that really his focus is on making sure that everyone prospers and succeeds under, the threat of these tariffs from the U.S. president, feeling as though the First Nations communities around the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario play a really important role in developing critical minerals from the ground here in this province. And so here's a bit of what we heard from the Premier. You'll hear about his apology first, and you'll hear from a First Nations chief who also shared some of her thoughts coming out of this meeting. Listen.
I just want to say I sincerely apologize for my words, not only if it hurt all the chiefs in that room, but all First Nations. Because we know that if we work together, and I said during the campaign, nothing moves without First Nations consultation, respecting duty to consult, and make sure that we work together.
Our chiefs felt today that the apology was sincere. We are looking at today as a new day going forward. And there are many things that, while we had many of our First Nations leadership here, our rights holders, we do have to take the conversation back to the remainder of our chiefs who are unable to be here due to crises and emergencies in their communities. And we will, reserve our comments until after that.
Just a reminder of viewers what the Premier's comments initially were some 24 hours ago. He was talking about some First Nations leaders and communities, to use his words, coming with their hat in their hand and asking for more money, saying it's not going to happen. You have to start looking after yourselves and doing things for yourselves. And so you heard there the apology and the statement subsequently from the First Nations chief. As for Bill 5, we heard from that chief that there have been some suggestions made to the Premier on what to do. She said she felt as though Bill 5 was passed with haste, too quickly, setting up these economic zones, which a lot of First Nations leaders felt that they would be cut out of conversations, that the checks and balances into getting these projects moving forward would take precedence over actual consultations and conversations. And so now we heard as well from the Premier that he's accepted invitations to visit some First Nations to continue the dialogue moving forward. Back to you.
Beatrice, thank you so much for this.